There's a bit to get through on this one because it is quite convoluted how this works, and the game is evolving, it is changing. So what does it take for someone at this stage to become an Origin player?
Yeah, look, the conversation's popped up again because of Payne Haas, the story last week that Payne Haas is potentially looking to defect to Samoa at the end of the season, has played for Australia previously. You can look at how complicated it is. Now, if you look down the bottom, that is to determine which state you're actually eligible for. So if you're born in New South Wales or Queensland, then there's a whole lot of factors at the bottom. But the main one is, if you weren't born in New South Wales or Queensland, did you reside in New South Wales or Queensland before your 13th birthday? And that leads to whether or not someone who wasn't born in Australia can play Origin. Now, the question is going to be someone like a Victor Radley, who's born in Sydney and decided to represent England. Does it make him any less of a New South Welshman that he was born here but decided to play for England? And Gus made the point last week on the podcast. At what point we're going to have to decide as a game, just if you're eligible to play Origin, why does it matter what international team you play for? Because if you go back 20 years, Brace, 2005, the New South Wales Origin team didn't have a single player who was eligible to play for Tonga or Samoa. There were no Polynesian players. You fast forward that to last year.
Totally different. There
were 7 players in that New South Wales team, 17 in the Origin series, who were eligible to play for those 2 states and Samoa.
So, Victor, it was 2022 when you pledged your allegiance to England ahead of the World Cup. 3 years on, how does that decision, which has written you off and been able to play State of Origin, sit with you?
Yeah, it still sits fine with me. It was a really big decision at the time, obviously, to play for England, and I've loved every minute of it, and it hasn't changed. I haven't been looking for the rules to get changed. That was a decision I made, and I'm comfortable with, and yeah, I'm pretty content with the rules being the way they are.
I agree with Billy Slater. I think at the start of your career, you should make a decision on what country you want to play for, and that's it. That's who you play for. And I don't agree with Gus that if you choose to play for Tonga, Samoa, Italy, Fiji, whoever it might be, that you can play Origin. I think if you want to play Origin, you have to play for Australia. That's why it's always been. And Wayne Bennett said it. Origin is Origin for a reason. Origin is Origin because of how authentic it is. There's nothing made up about Origin. The hatred between the 2 states is real. There's nothing manufactured at all. If you start changing that, you start tinkering with that, it takes away from what it is. And then all of a sudden it's gone. If you want to play an All-Stars game, play an All-Stars game. But we've tried that. It doesn't work. Nothing works like Origin. It's the greatest rivalry in Australian sport. Why do you want to stuff around with it for? I don't get it. I don't understand why you want to muck around with it for.
Can you get a balance struck, Cameron, in your perspective, where international rugby league can be improved and this tiering system that happens at the moment, we can strengthen all those other nations whilst also preserving State of Origin and what it really means?
I think we just need to scrap the tier system. You look how strong the Polynesian nations have performed over the last couple of years. You know, Samoa's they played in the World Cup final. They played in a Pacific Nations final against the Kangaroos. I was a lot like Gal a couple of years ago. I was, pretty sort of strong towards saying that if you elect to play State of Origin to represent Queensland or New South Wales, then you must go and play for the Kangaroos. But seeing the changing landscape, as Mal just spoke about, how we're so multicultural in our competition. We just had multicultural round just go by. We've seen the stats there. 48% of our competition base from the Pacific nations. So it's a strong representation of, Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, Papua New Guinea, these places. So I think let's just scrap all these different tier 1 and tier 2. I know, Victor just spoke about how he's comfortable with his decision to elect to play for England, which ruled him out of State of Origin. I'd love to see Victor Radley represent New South Wales. That would do great things for the sport. It would make it even more, greater than what it is right now, having someone like Victor involved. I also agree with Gal and what Billy said. I don't like the swapping and changing. I think at the start of your career, you need to decide which country it is that you want to represent, and you play for that country through the entirety of your career. The one thing about that is, and I've been thinking about this a little bit, with the growing, population of Pacific nations in our competition, if we go down that path, I think we all need to understand and accept that one day, possibly in the near future, out of the 34 players taking part in a State of Origin series, there could possibly be 5 or 6 of those 34 players representing the Kangaroos at the end of the year.
So when
And the rest will be made up
That's
by,
right.
by Pacific Nation
So when do we
players.
put Australian Rugby League first? At what point do we say that does Mount Meninga, the Australian coach, go, hang on a second, we've got to put Australian Rugby League first here. If you've got 34 players involved and only 5 of them are playing for Australia, we're helping all the other nations out, which makes the international game stronger. But at what point do we worry about Australia?
Yeah, I think we've got to worry about the future of the game, and I think the strength of the game in the future, the growing of our game in the future, is on the international stage. I think the emergence over the last 15 years of Pacific Island tests, and the fact that so many of our Pacific Island players now that play internationally are second and third generation Australians. They've grown up in the Australian system. They've come through the pathway system. They've played junior rep football. When Origin first started back in 1980, it was a Sydney competition, and it was 99% Anglo-Saxon sport. Our game is anything but that these days. Yeah. You look at all the junior rep teams, whether it's Queensland or New South Wales, and look at the predominance of Pacific Island talent.
Absolutely.
They're kids that were born here in Australia. They're not migrating to Australia to have a game of rugby league. They're born here. They're Australians. But I think the future growth of the game is on the international stage. So I just maintain, make the rules for Origin as strict as you like, right, to protect what Wayne Bennett's saying, the integrity of Origin, Queensland versus New South Wales. If you grow up in Australia and you qualify to play Origin football, you should be allowed to play Origin football. But then there's this other thing, international football, that's going to sell our game globally. You blokes might be around to see it, I won't. But I'm saying that's the future of the game. The future of the game is on the international stage, is growing the Pacific Island rightly, getting England stronger again, getting New Zealand strong again, Papua New Guinea coming into the competition. You know, I think that's the future growth of our game. So what I don't want to do is affect Origin, but at the same time I want to make international football a priority.
Gus, that
For the
probably
growth
comes
of
down
the
to money.
game.
That probably comes down to money. So where's the money come from for the international game? Is that the NRL or the Australian Rugby League, or whoever it might, with the RLIF putting more money into it? Like, because at the end of the day, it's about money. You know, 'cause, like, we had no.
It's $30,000, Gal, to play Origin per game, right?
But hang on a second. On
It's
one,
$3,000 for a test.
Yep.
So if
I
you
don't see how money comes into it at all.
well, we had an argument before the show. He's telling me, well, everyone wants to earn the $30,000 a game. But what is it? Are they passionate for their nation because they want to play for their nation?
But international,
or do they want the $30,000?
international football will earn its own rights. It'll earn its own money.
Well, with someone like Jerome Hughes, like for Jerome, I think the effect is probably for New Zealand Rugby League, because at the moment, a lot of the players who are of Tongan and Samoan heritage probably could play for New Zealand, right? So at the moment, a lot of those players are electing to play Origin, playing for Tonga or Samoa, because they can play Origin. And in the long run, that probably affects the New Zealand Rugby League, because you've lost a lot of players over the years to those two nations.
Yeah, I've even, there's a few boys, young boys coming through, tossing up if they want to play for Kiwis or Queensland or New South Wales. It's not Kiwis or Aussie, it's Kiwis or Origin. So that's,
That's a
probably,
problem.
Yeah, that's a bit of a problem. Like, we're losing young kids coming through to the Origin arena because you can't play both. So
I don't think it's going to hurt Origin. I understand what Wayne Bennett's saying. I don't think it's going to hurt Origin. We're not changing what Origin will be, provided you qualify for it. Make the eligibility as strict as you like for Origin, so it is genuinely New South Wales versus Queensland. But then go to this other level of the game, which is international football, which we need to grow our game.
Is that not going to hurt the Australian team in the long run, though? If you've got so many...
We've got a truckload of players, mate.
But hang on.
We need competition.
Smithy
What do you
just
want to
said-
win all the time?
Smithy just said a second ago that 34 players out there...
How was international football when no one could beat Australia? When Australia was so strong and no other nation could play the game?
I'm not saying...
We had no opposition.
It's competitive now. We just spoke about Tonga and Samoa
Brilliant.
playing.
It's brilliant.
It is brilliant. But are you not worried about if we just get rid of the concept you can play for Australia only if you play Origin? At some point in time, it's going to diminish the Australian team.
No, it's not.
How isn't it?
It's not.
If 29 or 30 of the 34 players are Pacific Islander or New Zealand or Pommy,
Well, get
how is
better.
it not going to diminish the Australian team?
Get better to get in the team.
Oh, gee, okay, that's as simple as that. Simple as that.
That's the way football works, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, exactly.
Yeah.
But Gal, there's a reason that the Origin gets paid so much and international football isn't, is because we've ignored the international game for so long. So really, there's no money in it, right? So over the course of time, if you invest in growing international rugby league, isn't the theory that in 10, 15 years that these players are going to be paid as much for playing test football as they are Origin?
This is
it
what
won't happen if the
frustrates-
Kangaroos
this is what
dominate.
frustrates me about what you say here. I'm all for the international game getting more money and us playing and having competition and it being fantastic. I'm all for that. But your argument there is saying basically these players, these Polynesian or Tongan and Samoan players are playing Origin for the money. Is that basically what you're saying?
No, it's not.
Well, because on one hand you tell me that they just want to play for their country because they're so passionate. On the other hand, you tell me they want the 30k a game. So, you're answering your own question.
So you're happy them to play for the wrong reasons then? You're happy them to continue the rules as it is now?
They shouldn't be playing for the wrong reasons. They shouldn't be playing at all.
Well, they're playing at the moment. There were 17 involved last year.
Why are they playing? Because of the money.
I don't know what their intentions are, but they played and the product was pretty good.
That's what you're saying, but it is very, very good. But my point to you is, they're playing. You're saying they're playing for the money. That's basically what you're saying.
I didn't say that.
That's what you're saying.
There's the incentive of $90,000 that you can't ignore, and to get international football to that stage where these players are getting paid,
are they playing for the passion or are they playing for the money?
Why can't it be both?
Because it shouldn't be both. They can't, when they want
that's
to play,
the reality. It's
when
there.
they want to play for their country, there's not the 90k there.
My point exactly.
Hey, Victor and Jerome, welcome to 100% Footy.
I love this.
I'm loving this.
You know it's on when it's
See how hard it is to talk to him.
I'm the only one making sense here.
For you,
in your own head.
no, we love you, Gal. Now.